there's several things that you want to consider when you're setting your goals. The first one is you really want to avoid being emotional about it. So, fear and greed are what drive the market short term. And, emotions can be really detrimental as we're trying to make good, sound decisions. You want to avoid making decisions out of fear, and you want to avoid being too overconfident when you're making decisions. So the first piece of wisdom that I can give you is to get your mind right about whose it is. Spend time convincing yourself that everything belongs to the Lord. There are at least 70 Bible verses that tell us that everything belongs to God. I encourage you to start reading them one by one until you completely get it. You can start in Psalm 34:1, John 1:3, Leviticus 27:30. Those are just 3 of the over 70 verses that I mentioned. So once you know whose it is, then you will not be led by fear nor greed. You will see money as a tool of worship rather than an idol to be worshiped. You'll see money also as an extension of God's hand, as modern-day manna from heaven that feeds and clothes and shelters your family. You'll also see money as a modern-day tool of sacrifice. So just as they used to sacrifice bulls and goats and doves in the temple in the Old Testament, we don't bring those things into church with us on Sunday. We bring our money. So those are the modern day substitutes for those. Fear can cause you to hoard or bury your treasure. Overconfidence will cause irreverence, disrespect, and mismanagement of God's money. So what about short-term goals? First, do your best to avoid unsecured debt. That is credit card debt, student loans, things that aren't backed by an asset. Without a very structured and disciplined plan to get out of that debt if you decide to utilize that. Set up and live by a budget. Don't live within your means. Live below your means, because you need to allocate some money for the future. You need to allocate some money for short-term needs that may come up as an emergency. So set up an emergency fund. 3 to 6 months of your monthly expenses is a good rule of thumb, but you really need to spend some time going through and thinking about what kind of emergencies you might face. What does your health insurance look like? What if you have to pay a deductible or some copays for an emergency that comes up with your health? What if you have to pay a car deductible because you get into an accident, or your homeowner's deductible because you're in a storm or have a fire? All of those things, or if you lose your job, of course. If you're in debt, make an aggressive plan to get out of debt. When starting out, spend more of your resources on your short-term goals. So build up that emergency savings. And keep some of that at home in case there are emergencies within the banking system, or, you can't get access to it for whatever reason. A good kind of rule of thumb or a place to start might be 10% of your emergency savings. Keep that at home. If you do, keep it in a safe place where it can't burn up or be easily lost or stolen. Protect your family from loss of income if you are the breadwinner. You want to look at your insurance coverage, your life insurance coverage. And then if you're planning on buying a home, that's considered a short-term goal. Put some money away in savings there. You should also have some long-term goals. So you have to balance your short and long-term goals depending on what stage of life you're in. Discipline is the key here. Even if most of your goals are short-term, don't neglect the long term. Commit to starting a retirement fund no matter how young you are, even if it's only $10 a month or $25 a month. Setting that aside will help you to create a long-term mindset and will instill discipline. And then you can start to increase your allocation towards those long-term goals as you reach your short-term goals. Then if you're married, get on the same page with your spouse. The world often says that God has a sense of humor because he typically pairs a spender and a saver together.
He sure does.
And, it's estimated that about 20 to 40% of divorces today are caused by financial problems. Having two very different views about money can be very divisive and a constant source of friction when you think about how many decisions we make about money in a single day. I mean, a simple trip to the grocery store can turn into a fight if you have people with two different ideas about what should go in the basket. Well, who has the right idea, the spender or the saver? Well, maybe the answer is neither. Perhaps the spender is frivolous and wasteful and saves nothing for a rainy day, expecting society or government to take care of them if they run out of money. Or perhaps they are just misunderstood and have a spirit of generosity. Perhaps the saver is so extreme and they're driven by fear that they neglect the needs of their own households to store it for the future. Or worse yet, they neglect their giving. Well, the one who is right is the one who agrees with God. So we are called to live in unity because a house divided against itself cannot stand. And we are called to have the mind of Christ. So we are to sit down with our spouses and have these conversations and get on the same page. Not necessarily on the wife's page or the husband's page, but on Christ's page.